Over in the pits of the CME.
This is amazing. Twitter isn't even public yet. Okay, has some time before its IPO, but it's already causing noise among investors who are looking for the next big stock bet.
So could Twitter become the new momentum darling of Wall Street? Joining us now is Jeff Reeves. He's our darling from InvestorPlace.com, the editor. Jeff, great to see you. A lot of people are saying Tesla. Could Twitter be the new Tesla? What do you say to that comparison?
Well, I think it could be. I mean, there's a lot of similarities between the two. For one is that Tesla offered when it was not exactly making money, and it used its IPO to fund growth. That's vastly different than a company like Facebook, where I think a lot of people can admit the people that got rich there were just executives, and they didn't really make a lot of money that they deployed to make the company grow or ultimately change. I mean, Twitter has an opportunity like Tesla where they go public, they make some money on the markets, and they invested in their company. And that's the American success story that we like to see about it in a public offering, is where a company uses that money to grow.
Jeff, can they make money over at Twitter? In some cases, making money isn't exactly the biggest deal at the moment. Amazon, we were talking about this yesterday. Amazon can keep losing money and everybody still wants the stock, but Twitter is a newbie, and people will be as tough on it as they were on Facebook, where everyone was saying, can you monetize mobile, etc. Can Twitter do it?
Well, I think they can. I mean, number one, you have to remember that Twitter already has figured the mobile problem out. 75% of their users are mobile. 65% of the revenue comes from mobile. So there's not a shift they need to do. They're already there. And secondly, I'd point out that Twitter is losing money, but they're putting a lot of money in R&D. So far this year, they spent about $112 million on research out of revenue of only about $250 million total. So about 45% of their entire budget is in R&D right now. They're investing heavily in themselves. So again, I think people have to understand that this is a company that's ramping up, that's looking for that hockey stick. If you look at a 3-year chart of Tesla, it didn't really do a lot for the first 2 years that it was out there, and then all of a sudden it went like gangbusters because it kind of proved the naysayer was wrong. Now, is that going to happen for Twitter?
Let me just stop you there, Jeff, because it's easy to understand what Tesla was putting money in. Tesla can't produce enough cars right now. They have more orders than they do have cars. But you wonder what Twitter would do. The great thing about IPOs is it gives you all this new capital to invest in expansion growth. In what would Twitter invest? I mean, we know what Tesla would invest in, which is cars. It's very simple. In what would Twitter invest?
Well, I think it's a question of figuring out a way to use the social media platform better, like you said, to monetize people, but also for reach as like an information filter.
But that's kind of vague, Jeff. Forgive me, but that's a vague answer. Be specific. What would they get into that a lot of other sites aren't already into?
Well, Twitter's already experimenting with video right now, and one of their biggest problems that they have is large contract advertisers, they may not have that much interest in Twitter at a current user base because they're only a fifth the size of Facebook. If they do get scale simply on users, you tap into a bigger pool of prospective advertisers simply because of the reach that comes with bigger campaigns like that. So I don't necessarily think that Twitter has to reinvent the wheel here. I do think that there is an opportunity for growth and scale within the existing model, simply monetizing better and then using a different medium. I mean, Twitter doesn't have a lot of video integration right now. And, you know, video is kind of the way that mobile media has gone. The CPMs are much better for video than they are for conventional display ads. So I think there's a lot that can be done with the existing model. And again, I think that's the spirit of an IPO, is to raise capital and deploy it to kind of make your business go to the next level. And I think that that's something people need to understand, where even as Twitter is operating at a loss right now, they're putting that money to work in their R&D department. It's not just bleeding cash because it's not operating right.
Each time that somebody thinks that Twitter's so-called jumped the shark, the microblogger tends to turn around and get utilized in both serious and more Hollywood type of situations. Miley Cyrus tweeting after her twerking incident, and then you've got the issues in Egypt that were involving Twitter. You look at this and you say there's real opportunity here. The question becomes, Jeff, do you jump in when it first goes public, or do you wait till there's a little bit of a shakeout?
Well, I do think that Twitter is actually run like a real company. Again, people need to kind of look at Facebook as a different thing. There's two classes of shares at Facebook. Zuckerberg had a 28% stake. The executive team at Twitter collectively has a smaller stake than Zuckerberg does. The CEO only has 1.6%. They don't have two classes of stock. They're running like an actual publicly traded company, not a vanity project. And like you said, I think that these stories that are out there are really good. The narrative is very sexy, but I think investors have to, when you look at the balance sheet, you look at the S1 that was filed, and you look at how the shares are structured, it It actually is a legit company. Like LinkedIn showed us that that wasn't just a social media fad. There was actually money behind it, and they found a way to make a business profitable, and investors made a lot of money on that. I think I'd caution people to think that just because you see a Miley Cyrus twerking tweet that that's all it's about. Like, there is a serious business here behind the whole Twitter IPO.
Of course. And Dick Costolo, they were smart enough to get him in place as the CEO. He's a grown-up. He knows what he's doing. He's a smart businessman, and they could have a real future. Jeff, good to see you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks for having me.
You have to explain